Thank you. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, the mic is here and it's on, and I don't need to wear it because I can hear myself. You guys are good? Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Ryan. And good evening, and thank you guys for coming out. I want to thank the Lannan Foundation for their support and generosity in providing me the opportunity to just write. Big thanks to the School for Advanced Research for letting me stay at the Bandelier residence, and most important, the 6 weeks to do what I love to do. So that I can share with you this evening stories that I hope bring to light the lives of the people of the Choctaw-Apache Tribe of Ebarb, the Toledo Bend communities, and Sabine Parish. Big thanks to Maria Spray for being my liaison, my guide, Doug Dearden for working through a weekend to fix my internet. Seriously, I would be completely lost if I couldn't Google. Nanda Beck for being so inclusive and excellent for an excellent 4th of July. My neighbors Alfred and Louise for being so kind, and everyone at SAR who've made this summer a productive one. So Aztec Sandwiches is about displacement in body and in soul. It explores a people who are still recovering from the dismantling of indigenous culture through centuries of colonialism and exclusion. And while the Pinto family are fictitious, they do represent the real families of the Choctaw-Apache tribe. I first came to this project while in graduate school at McNeese. For years it was just a title, nothing more. But I kept coming back to the image of a stack of tamales on a paper plate. When I was a kid, I never thought of them as special. They tasted good, great with a glass bottle Coke. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s, well into my 20s, that I realized the Indian, or what anyone would want to quantify as native, had been in my face the entire time, that I was actually eating my heritage. And no one could take that away from me or my dad. My dad who grew up and spent his entire life knowing he was Native but didn't know how to be Native. And as Ryan pointed out, the Toledo Bend Reservoir was created by both Texas and Louisiana state governments when they dammed the Sabine River to create the reservoir. And there were which is our tribal lands at the time, or our lands at the time. And now everyone, pretty much, if they haven't moved away, they still live along the banks. And so that is the culture or the people that I'm writing about in these stories. When I got here, I wanted to be a machine. I was going to write from sunup to sundown. But of course, the lure of the plaza and all that Santa Fe has to offer presented a real challenge to my initial vow. I was no machine. I did, however, manage to scratch out 7 stories, or chapters, that carries the growth of my protagonist, Robbie Pinto, and his family, and how they've learned to cope with the loss of land and of their language. Perhaps this novella, as it is now, could be extended into something larger, maybe a novel. I hope that I have enough to read them all to you tonight, and truthfully, I will not have enough time to read them all to you tonight. So I've picked 3 stories. I'm going to stop babbling and start reading. So here we go. Aztec Sandwiches for my dad. Good Indians. Corn shucks. Saturday morning used to be all cartoons. But when Aunt Ruby was put in charge of making the food for the reunion, I was put in charge of helping her in the kitchen. See, this is when you boil the chicken and your pork. She used a wooden spoon the size of my cousin Taco's arm. She was our great aunt, but everybody just called her Aunt Ruby. It was easier that way, and if you listen to her, she'd tell you that dropping the great didn't make her feel old as dirt. Listen to me, Hicotelito. Never buy masa from the Big Star groceries on Main Street. You buy masa at Brothers Corner on Pitchford. Well, what's wrong with Big Star? It's way closer. I know it's closer, but sometimes you have to go the long way around. Ride your bike a little further. I don't have a bike. Then you walk. You walk a little further. Walking's good. It's good exercise. They have Coke at Big Star. They never have Coke at Brothers. They're always out. Coke's not good for you anyways. Besides, we have Coke here. She nodded to the knockoff version she bought from the other market. It's got less sugar, Won't make you so fat. Why can't I go to the Big Star? She opened the door to the fridge. I don't like the people there. They think they're all that. She closed the door, poured a glass of apple juice. You know, the last time I went, the manager followed me from the pumpkins all the way to the ice cream. I merely gave him a what for. She stirred the chicken. They always think they're better than us 'cause our name. What's wrong with our name? It's Pinto. You're a Pinto. And Pintos come from the lesser side of the 13 families. I didn't know what that meant, but I did know at the same time. It wasn't a mystery not many people liked us. I mean, I had my close cousins and my Aunt Ruby, who took care of me after my dad went to prison and my mom went missing. I mean, I was 10 years old, but I wasn't stupid. I was innocent, but my hands were dirty. They were brown dirty, like too brown. I took those hands after my family. I was a Pinto, doomed since birth to wear the hands of my father and his father everywhere I went. So that when I appeared around a corner, people thought I was a ghost, an apparition, a curse. Not really. They didn't run and hide at me, from me or anything like that. We were good Indians. They just, for some reason, didn't have a taste for a Pinto, even though we were all Choctaw-Apache, all from the same tree. Drink your juice. I'm not thirsty. Then drink it anyway. Why? Because you're going to need energy to help me with these tamales. It's hot in here. You know what they say, don't you? About the kitchen? About it being too hot? I can leave? She laughed. That shit only works for white folks, not you. Now drink your juice. Aunt Ruby was like that. She could give me so much crap and make me do whatever she wanted me to do. And when you're 10, the last thing you want is to be stuck in a hot kitchen with the steam coming from the pots. Condensation would run down the walls, over the portraits that declared her home a happy home, over the crucifixes. And when the crucifixes dripped, you knew what suffering was. But Aunt Ruby would claim them a blessing, that Jesus was sweating along with us through the good times, like making tamales, and the bad times, like why me and Taco and Raylene had to live with her. But tamales were her claim to fame. She made them for every event, and people ate them all. Didn't matter how many she made, how much money she spent on the ingredients, or how much labor she or me put into them. Folks would stack their plates like tamale pyramids, temples so high they could touch the clouds. I didn't like being in the air. It made me breathless. Like one time, I almost died from no air. I moved in with Aunt Ruby and my cousins, Taco and Raylene, a few days after my 10th birthday. My new town was named Hawks, and it wasn't that far from where I had lived with my mom, about an hour's drive. Mr. Rick, a man of whom I thought was a family friend but had been a state-appointed social worker, knocked on my door the Saturday morning everything changed. He drove a white Ford LTD that always was missing a hubcap. I remember when his car pulled into my gravel driveway, I was in front of the TV that was in front of the window. Mom wasn't home. Dad was up in Quincy. Hey, Bud. He called me Bud. I hated the name at first. I always corrected him, said, my name is Robbie. But he kept calling me Bud. It had gotten to the point that I could tell the change in the direction of the wind, the falling of the barometric pressure, by the way his tone would change when he called me Bud. And this time, at my door, on my porch, he was a tornado, ready to rip right through my house and send me soaring through the air. Your mama's not home, is she? No, she hasn't got back yet. Are you watching He-Man, Masters of the Universe? Yeah. You know, my son Dre, he loves He-Man. In fact, he loves it more than G.I. Joe and Transformers combined. I stared at him, amazed that some other kid not only liked what I liked, but loved it so much they'd choose it over another when I just watched what was on. Didn't matter if it was supposed to be for girls either. Care Bears, Strawberry Shortcake, even She-Ra, Princess of Power. I watched them all. Hey, Bud, he said, I need to tell you something, okay? And as he said that, a cop car pulled into my driveway, parked behind Mr. Rick's LTD. The same driveway my mom pushed me down when I was learning to ride my bike. The same driveway I used to play my own version of Superman I called Mighty Man. I would use a windbreaker that once belonged to one of my mom's boyfriends, but had left it behind as a cape. It was gold. It was black with gold lettering. It was really an advertisement for a long-haul trucking company, but I didn't care. It swallowed me, and it billowed when I ran. When did your mama leave? Last week? I think so. It might be a little while before she comes home, okay? In the meantime, I'm gonna need you to come with me, all right, bud? I was still in the doorway with the sweetness of pink milk from my cereal on my tongue, the roof of my mouth shredded from the sprocket edges of my Captain Crunch knockoff King Vitamin. This is Officer Sean, and he's here to make sure we get you someplace fun for a little while. Officer Sean wore a blue uniform and smelled like a pine tree. He had a crew cut and wore a giant metal watch. He smiled down at me over his shades, and I can't really remember, and I don't know if it even matters, but he was chewing gum. He had big hands and swollen fingers. I'd never seen hands that big before. My dad had always said that you can't trust a man with big hands, especially a white man. But he was with Mr. Rick, a black man, and I guess that's why I went with him. I guess that's why I left my home. You like McDonald's? Mr. Rick asked. We're gonna go to McDonald's in a little while, get you a Happy Meal, what do you say? And just like that, the tornado had ripped away the roof to my house, sucked me outside and into a bruised sky. By the time I landed, I was at Aunt Ruby's house in Hawks, an hour's drive west, but still in Louisiana. And though I was still at the same state, it felt like a different planet. Aunt Ruby was religious, a devout Catholic, and her house smelled of flowers and incense. She lit candles, and if you looked for one, you could find a stray prayer card tucked away for you when the timing was just right, when you needed it. Mom took me to church. I was baptized on my 5th birthday. It'd been my idea. I had just come back from vacation Bible school and was super into Jesus. Spelled it with 2 E's and a Z. That's exactly how I spelled it too. And years later, I'd find that Bible with the name scribbled in clumsy loops, Jesus. Now, don't put too much meat in the masa. She drew a perfect line of filling, sprinkled salt, pepper, and red pepper flakes. And don't get greedy with the masa. You use too much and you wind up eating cornbread. Too little, and what do you have? A lump of meat. Her curly black hair blew in the fan's oscillating breeze. She had masa on her forearms, sweat on her brow. The record player in the living room played Elvis. Taco came through the kitchen door from the outside. Don't let that screen door slam, Taco. What have I told you? Don't let it slam? Then why'd you let it slam, huh? I don't know, he rubbed his eyes. Listen, Papoose, it's important you hear me. I can't watch you all the time, and Lord knows what kind of things he sees I wouldn't want to see. You have to, Raylene, turn that down. Yes, now. 'Cause I said so, that's why. Come on in here with us, and I'll tell you a story. Did y'all know that tamales are Indian? And turn off the AC, I got the door open in here. She wiped her brow with her forearm. A piece of masa stuck to her forehead. Raylene walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of knockoff Coke, and sat at the table. They sure are. Come all the way from Mexico before Cortez. The Aztecs, or Mexica, as they called themselves, used to eat tamales all the time. She tied a shuck, set it in the steamer, began another. They were so common, they were like having a sandwich nowadays. Only very little meat was used. Back then, they used pumpkin, squash, beans, avocado. Yeah, sometimes they used fruit. Why do you make them, Aunt Ruby? I asked. Well, Hicotolito, I make them because they're us, even when we don't want them to be. I'm not a tamale, Raylene said. You are whatever you want to be, but yeah, you're a tamale. And you're a tamale, she said to me, and you too, Papoose, you a tamale too. We sat in the kitchen with the door open as the sun set and the mosquitoes came out. It'd be completely dark before we closed it. Then Aunt Ruby would turn the only window unit on, and we'd sit in the living room watching Star Search and then Unsolved Mysteries. Nights like that, I couldn't help but think about Dad, about what it must have been like in prison, to be up in Quincy, as they said it. How lonely it must have been, since he was the only Indian, and especially since he was innocent. He was a good Indian, convicted of a crime because, as Mr. Bartley, the morning shift manager at Brothers Corner on Pitchford, had said, he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But if you asked Aunt Ruby, he was there for something he couldn't help, even if he wanted to. He was brown, dark brown, the color of earth after a rain. He stayed out in the sun too much, and as Aunt Ruby would say, too much time in the sun got you dark. And I couldn't help but think that if he had stayed home, Dad still would have pulled him over, put him in prison for killing my mom, though I know he didn't do it. I thought about my house before Mr. Rick had come, before Officer Sean, where my mom could have been since they never found her. I imagined her at home, waiting for me, doing dishes, or mad at me for not picking up my toys. That it was only a matter of time before I could go back. She'd come pick me up. That Mr. Rick would set it up so that me and her and Dad would all live together again. There was a crawl space under my house. I used to think there was a cave there, a portal, and that it lined up perfectly under my bed, and that's where they came from, the shadows. My shadow came from there, and so did my mom's and my dad's. Sometimes we forgot our shadows, forgot that they're us, caused by the light, and how dark they are. What do we do with that dark part? Do we pray? Sing? Do we dance? Okay, it's the second story. This one's called Pressure. Get some water real quick. Okay. Tocalo was the name we made up for an old creek that winded through our patch of woods. It emptied into a tributary, then emptied into Toledo Bend. It was the best place to catch a monster. In the summer, me and Carlos and his brother Neptune pulled apart wood piles and stuck our arms down burrows and wiggled our fingers in the dirt, hoping to touch the firm, undulating coolness of scales. Every root and every vine we looked at twice to make sure it was a snake or not. Check that one over there. Carlos pointed to a hole in the creek bank. It was the one hole I didn't trust, too big for a moccasin, and there was no telling what was in there. I already did, Neptune said. No, you didn't, Carlos said. There's no way you could have checked that hole in the little time we've been here, and you just crossed the creek to get there. I didn't see you check. Me neither, I said. Well, it looks scary. You can't chicken out now. Well, what if there's an alligator in there? I'm not getting my arm bit off. Ain't no alligators this far in. Still, guys, that's a big freaking hole, Neptune said. Neptune's real name was Jack, and he had been born a hydrocephalus. He was 2 years younger than Carlos, and though his head was an extreme, that didn't prevent him getting the nickname Neptune from his Uncle Bob. He and Carlos might as well have been twins, or to hear Carlos talk, Neptune was his shadow, a version of his younger self, if only by a few years. I'm not doing it. It's too big. You should do it, he pointed to Carlos. Yeah, you should do it. You're the expert. Think you're all tough. That was all your idea anyways. You want me to do it? Yeah. You want me to put my arm in there? Uh-huh. I would, but I'm over here, on the other side of the creek. I can't get over there just yet, so you should be the one to do it. Well, I'm not doing it. I'll wait for you. Robbie, why don't you do it? Carlos asked. I'm not doing it. You guys are pussies. I'll do it, but I'll have to do it later because I can't get my pants wet. What? You can't get your pants wet? Yes, Neptune, that's what I just said. Mom got these for me for church, and I can't get them wet or they'll ruin. But you're out here in the woods with us, I said. Carlos gave me a mean look, a look that meant both anger and embarrassment. It was a look he'd use in the future, an expression that meant, I'm a dangerous dude. In the words of Peter Tosh, a stepping razor, don't mess with me or you'll get cut. You're full of it. You're scared too. Admit it. You're a chicken shit. Neptune stood along the bank next to the hole, laughing so hard at his brother that he didn't watch where he stepped and slipped on the mud and fell on his butt. He sat for a moment with the creek up to his knees. Dad's really going to belt me for this, he said. Now that's funny, Carlos pointed. We laughed at Neptune sitting in the water, and it really wasn't that funny, but the laughter was like a crack in the dam, one that grew and grew until the crack became a gash, and you couldn't do anything but stop the water. Maybe it was the heat, but we laughed at Neptune so hard that we didn't see Taco coming up from behind us. What are you doing here? I said. Aunt Ruby's looking for you. For what? I don't know. She's just looking for you. That's all I know. Bet she wants me to help her make more tamales. Maybe. She just got back from the store. What are y'all doing out here anyways? He sat on the creek bank with his arms around his knees. You hunting snakes? No, we're not hunting anything, I said. You should just go home. Tell Aunt Ruby I'll be there when I get there. She's going to get mad at you. I don't care. Let her. Me and the guys have important matters to attend. Like looking for snakes? For the last time, I'm going to tell you. Hey, Robbie, let him help, Carlos said. Maybe he can help us sort something out. What do you need to sort out? Taco asked. Well, we got this thing, see? We want you to help us, but the only way you can truly hang with us is if you pass this test. I looked at Carlos and then to Neptune, who was standing up, the backside of his pants caked with mud. What test? Taco asked. It's the ultimate test for bravery. We do it all the time, and we pass. Now, if you want to hunt with us, You have to prove you're worthy. I'm worthy? What's the test? See that hole over there across the creek where Neptune is standing? Yeah? All you have to do is put your arm down in there and tell us what you feel. That's all? Just put my arm down there and tell you what's in it? Yeah, that's all. Well, what's in there? He asked. That's for us to know and for you to find out. I mean, we've already done it, so we know what's in there. Yeah, and look, Neptune said, we're all okay. Taco climbed into the creek, waded over to where Neptune stood, took off his red hoodie, and hung it on a branch. It dangled in the air as if an invisible boy were standing behind him. He wore that hoodie everywhere he went, even during summer when it got 98 in the shade. Sometimes it was almost as if that hoodie had become a cape, a red flowing Superman cape that allowed him to fly. His real name was Hosie Jr., and he was named after his father, who was killed in a log truck accident over in Grady Hill. Taco never knew his dad. He was too young when the accident happened to understand that his dad wasn't coming back. He was kind of an outcast because he didn't have a dad. He was the kid that had been touched by death way too early. And for that, I think we were a little bit scared of him, like he was a bad omen. His mom had been a lunch lady at Hawks Elementary up until she won the lottery. Not really. She didn't win like the lottery. She didn't win millions of dollars and split the second she got the money. She met a man from Shreveport who owned a trucking company. She quit her job at Hawks Elementary and told Taco she'd be back to get him after everything settled, after they got a house and got comfortable in Shreveport. In the meantime, he was to stay at Aunt Ruby's for at least the summer, him and Raylene, that she'd be back to get him in time, for him to start second grade in the new town. But summer came and went. Then another, then another, then another. She never played the lottery. Don't think she ever bought a ticket. Aunt Ruby would say if you never bought a ticket, you could never win. She meant that about God. Taco clung to me like Neptune did to Carlos, though we weren't brothers. In his eyes, we had the same mother. And that's all I have to do. Yep, that and tell us what you find. And I can hang with y'all? Sure. Taco readied his hand. The area around the hole was covered in moss. He lied on the soft green, breathed deep, closed his eyes, and sank his arm into the darkness. How do you know when there's too much pressure? Can you learn to see what it looks like? Is pressure something that's taught in school? What do you do when pressure tries to break you? What about 1,200 pounds per square inch of pressure, of beak to bone? Taco jerked. He didn't scream. He just looked at me, his face slackened with tears running down. In the time it took to understand what had happened, the wind had crawled up my back. The crying woman of Grady Hill wailed in my eyes and my ears. The drums in my head pounded. Neptune yelled for help. Me and Carlos waded across the creek and ran to Taco, who was still on his bed of moss, shoulder deep in the hole. He was crying and muttering something I couldn't understand. It was the rambling of a child in pain, and even though I was only a few years older than he, it was a language I'd already forgotten. Something's got me. Pull your arm out, man. I can't. I'm stuck. It hurts. Something had his arm. Something in the hole jerked him, was trying to pull him into a gateway to all that was horrible. I can't move. It's got me. We just stood there, 3 boys struck by lightning, and for a moment we had been charred by the bolt. For a moment was eternal in Tocala. The trees arched over us, hiding us from the world. The water flowed over the stones and swirled in the natural swimming holes. Deer would walk right up to you because they didn't know you, didn't know what you were capable of. We wanted to find a monster. That was the whole reason we had come there. Tocala was sacred because we knew that beneath the veneer of tranquility lied something dark, something older than we, something primal. Help me pull him up, Neptune said, grabbing Taco's shoulder. Come on, guys, stop looking stupid. I stopped looking stupid and grabbed Taco by the waist of his jeans. Carlos grabbed his legs, and on 3, we pulled, and every time we yanked, he cried out. We pulled as hard as we could, like we were in a tug-of-war, and the rope was about to break. And in what felt like a lifetime to a kid, but had only been about a minute of tugging, his arm began to emerge. Jesus, Taco, why are you so heavy? I pulled at his waist. A belt loop had torn in the struggle. It's not me, he said. Wait, what's down there? Carlos asked. Is it a snake? Holy shit, did you get bit? But before he could reply, he was out of the hole. Only thing was, he wasn't alone. Something the size of a beagle was attached to his hand. and it truly was a monster. "It's a snapper!" Neptune's voice cracked with an inappropriate glee. "No, man, that's an alligator snapper," Carlos said. "Get it off! Get it off!" Taco was rolling on the ground with the turtle clinging to his hand. "What do we do?" I asked. "They say you have to wait until it thunders. Thunder is the only thing that this alligator snapper's afraid of." "What? Who said that? Everybody knows that. Guys," Neptune said, holding a solid piece of oak, "keep him still." We held him down while Neptune knocked on the turtle's serrated shell with a stick. It took a few knocks before it finally let go and latched onto the wood. "It's too heavy. I can't hold it." He held the stick like a fishing rod, like he had caught the horror from the hole, like he had been the angler that saved everyone from the creature from the deep. But the turtle was too heavy to lift. It yanked on the stick, pulling him around like a headstrong pit bull fighting for territory. "Drop the stick, Neptune," Carlos said. "I can't. What if it attacks us?" "It won't. Just drop it." He dropped the stick and jumped out of the turtle's way as it hissed and braced itself against the earth. Its claws gripped the soil, its neck was fully extended, and its mouth was open enough we could see its worm tongue. There was blood on its beak, a boy's blood. I held Taco while Carlos and Neptune distracted the turtle. "Let me look at it," I said. "It hurts. It hurts," he said. His hand was tucked beneath him to protect him from any more harm. "Let me see." I grabbed his arm and pulled it from beneath him. The hand looked like a hand. All the fingers were there, except the thumb was wrong. It had been pulled, torn, too far back. There was a split in the palm exposing the meat where the turtle had bitten through, punctured his hand like a blade. The bite then had torn in the struggle, leaving a dangling thumb. 20 stitches had put him back together. 1 unit of blood had replaced what he'd lost. For years after, he'd have a half-moon scar on both sides of his hand. His thumb would sit crooked, like where a branch had been broken. And while the twig that replaced it was acceptable, it was off. Like you knew something wasn't right about his hand, that you didn't stare at it, but you did at the same time. Doctor said the bite had torn away a nerve, a thread that connected the outside world to his brain, his heart. It was a wound so deep that even though we couldn't see it for what it was at the time, it was that moment in which Taco's life came to a fork. And the path he took would change who he would grow up to be. The blood, the monster in the cave, could have been any one of us, but it was Taco who, because he wanted to belong, lost the link between him and the part of him that learned about the world and how vicious it was. So that he wouldn't feel anything with that hand, not a hot pan, an ice cube, the grit of sand, himself, or a woman. He'd end up calling it his dead hand, and it would always be a part of him. Seemed death had touched him before any of us, had introduced itself to him, and had taken the very hand he had extended in friendship. Sounds like it's raining. Okay, so this will be my last story. I hope I have time to read this one. This is the titular story, Aztec Sandwiches. Oh, and I do want to mention that the previous 2 stories that we just heard comes from Robbie when he was a little boy. Obviously, he's, a kid. Aztec Sandwiches finds him at 17. Right. The sign read, "Everett and Rivers and Garcia reunion today at the Sunrise VFW Pavilion." Aunt Ruby stared at the lettering as close as you could get. Her glasses fogged in the heat. Her chair, parked at the edge of the sidewalk, threatened to teeter over. Raylene, one arm heavy with a platter of baked macaroni, and her baby, Louis, on her hips, pointed at me and then to her with her lips. But I had my hands full with a chocolate cake in one and a watermelon in the other. "It says Everett and Rivers and Garcia." She turned her chair away. "It doesn't say Pinto. There are supposed to be 4 families on the sign. 4, not 3, 4. We can fix it when we get there. Well, after we bring in the food, Aunt Ruby." "Robbie, our name's not on the sign. Why?" "Maybe they forgot." "Bull. They didn't forget. They knew what they were doing, not putting our name on the sign. It's those little things that burn me. Where's Randy Everett?" "He's probably inside setting up for the dance." We approached the entrance to the pavilion, just like we'll be doing as soon as we get, "Oh, hello, Aunt Ruby. So good to see you." "Why, didn't expect me to come?" "Oh, nothing do. It's just been so long since I seen you, that's all. Heard you weren't feeling well." "Well, let me tell you how I feel, Randy Everett." "Don't worry," he said with his hand up. "I know exactly what you're about to say, and you're exactly right. You're not on the sign. Pinto, not on the sign. Now that's a shame. Well, it should be fixed. We're still part of this tribe, last I heard anyway. Of course, he pulled out a flip phone. And I don't like making excuses, Aunt Ruby, but my granddaughter Haley was put in charge, and I'll be that she didn't put Pinto on the sign. She beats all. Aunt Ruby rolled past him with a smirk, rolled past me, and went to our section where a group of men sat. They sprang up when they saw her, and she began to encourage them to help put out the food, get the floor cleared for the dancing. That woman is the living end, Randy Everett said. Robbie, hope you realize what she is. Yeah, and what's that? That woman raised all you kids and has made it to every reunion, every powwow, church service, has sat on the board ever since I can remember. I don't think she was ever a kid herself. He looked at me. Your melon's dripping. What? The watermelon. It's dripping all over the floor. Shit, hold on. I got it. I ran as fast as anyone could, weighted down with food toward the table. Robbie, honey, I want you to meet someone. This is Leo Brings Rain. He's one of the best fancy dancers I've ever seen. Nice to meet you. I stuck out my hand. Back at you, brother. He squeezed. He was all feathers, beads, fur, and quill. Somewhere there was a man beneath all the regalia, a large, tattooed man. I had a choker in the sock drawer in my room. I wore it a few times, but always felt kind of silly. It was all fake leather and plastic bone beading. Leo Brings Rain had double braids that went to his waist. I wondered how much time it took to clean and keep flat in this humidity. I wondered if one of his girlfriends took them out for him at night before bed and then fixed them again for him in the morning just before he got on his motorcycle, which would be an Indian, no less. Your grandma's good people, he said, releasing my hand. Can't trade her in, I said, but he frowned a little at me, either not getting the joke or didn't think it was funny. Where are you from? I asked. No, Comanche, but I'm from Bakersfield. I come out to perform when I can. Comanche. He was the traditional enemy. I wanted to know more about Leo Brings Rain. How did he get so tall? Where was his great aunt? But then someone tapped me on the shoulder. Robbie, I need you, Raylene said, hanging up her cell. Lewis clung to her hip. Lewis with the big fat head. I need you to do me the biggest favor. Yeah, sure, what is it? I was excited, eager to leave the pavilion. I need you to go help Raymond. He's loading the truck, but he needs help getting here. You mean Raymond Redcalf? Militia wing for AIM, Lakota warrior, needs my help loading tamales? And I need to be his guide, his Sacagawea? I teased her. It wasn't every day a man's man like Raymond Redcalf needed any kind of help. I mean, this guy fixed cars, he broke horses, could play defensive whatever, and he needed my help. But then I realized that I just compared myself to Sacagawea, not bad to be compared to, but not what I was shooting for. And the wind left my sails. Raylene wrinkled her brow. Down 2 jokes, I said. Of course, where is he? You know where he is. And I did know exactly where he was. I was just trying to play out my act, save some face. There was no other place in all of Hawks he could be except for my house, which was his house and had been since Raylene got pregnant, which was Aunt Ruby's house. He was shirtless and loading the coolers into the back of the truck when I pulled in. His hair was down, and even though he was sweating, it was straight, no fluff. He was dark, but not too dark, medium dark, sand maybe. He had muscles and an AIM tattoo on his shoulder. Hey, Robbie, glad you came. I see Raylene gave you my message. Yeah, so what do you need help with? I held my hand above my brow, shielding my eyes from the white sunlight. With these tamales, man. Dude, there's so many of these things. I don't think they'll even get half eaten. I feel like I've been loading hay bales. The truck was half full. I stepped onto the porch and went inside. Coolers were stacked to the ceiling from the living room to the kitchen. I don't know how she does it, man. I stayed up pretty late last night with Louis, and she was in the kitchen making them. How could she? I don't know, dude. I've been living here since I was 10, and every year she makes this many, and it doesn't seem like she could do this in real life. Indian magic, he said, setting down a cooler. We loaded the rest of them, and they all fit perfectly, each block symmetrical, like a pyramid in the back of the truck, which sat at an uncomfortable angle with the back way lower than the front. I looked at Raymond from the passenger side. He needed me to ride with him. I was sure of it. Just drive slow and don't hit any potholes. The road to the pavilion was all highway with double yellows and single whites all the way. There were hills like soft mounds and curves that stretched far and wide, so we were able to traffic the tamales without much drag. The radio was on 98.9, the Bobcat. So what do you think? Raymond asked. About what? About the song, dude. What do you think? He chewed out a fingernail. Even with the windows down, his hair stayed in place. Are we just another brick in the wall? I don't know. Come on, Robbie, you can't tell me you've never thought about it. I'm not sure I get it. But I lied. I thought about it often, more often than I imagined Raymond Redcalf could understand. I was disposable. I had come to a place where I didn't fit, not Indian enough, not smart enough, not strong enough. Aunt Ruby was old and had her tamales. Raylene found her purpose in the cause, and that's where she found Raymond, whose purpose was now Lewis. I wanted to drop out of school. Hell, I wanted to drop out of Hawks and go anywhere, especially to a place no one knew me, nor the damn tribe. You see, he said, it's like, back off, man. I got my thing, you got your thing. Just let it be, okay? That's the Beatles, I said under the wind from the open windows. What? Never mind. So the song's about peace. Yeah, dude, it's more than that. It's about peace, but it's also about respecting someone else's right to be free. Like an eagle, you know? I looked out the window, watched the trees. The song played out. Fleetwood Mac came on. I thought about what he had said, about respecting others' rights to be free. Sure, but what about my right to be free? Why was it that I didn't feel as light as an eagle feather? Shit, he said, lowering his shades. What? I sat up. Cops. What? I looked behind us. Don't look behind, man. Don't look suspicious. We were weighted down like lowriders with coolers stacked 3 high in the bed of the truck. We didn't look suspect at all. Just let me handle this, he said. I've been in situations like this before. I know our rights. The cop opened his door, stepped out, walked to the truck and stopped at the bed, looked inside. What's the problem, officer? License and registration. This is my girlfriend's truck. She's at the pavilion. That's where we're headed. Your name is Raymond Redcalf? Yes. Look, I don't think we did anything wrong. I think, and you're from South Dakota? Yes, but you part of that organization, AIM? Yes, but I know we didn't do any... You need to step out of the truck, sir. Huh? Come on, step out of the truck. He pointed at me. Both of y'all. It was weird. The road. That part of the highway you never see up close. The blacktop, the minute cracks in the tar, the heat that comes from it, the brightness of the lines, the blowing weeds, the gravel and ant beds along the sides, the wind of passing traffic. What's in the coolers? Nothing, man, just food. Raymond talked with his hands. Just food, huh? The officer walked around the bed, felt back around the back. Wouldn't be trying to fuck with me, would you? No, listen. This is just food from the thing at the VFW today. You do know we're in the middle of a heroin epidemic in the parish. Did you know that? Black tar from Mexico. He realized the tailgate was open. How in the hell did y'all pack all this with this truck with no cords, no bungees, no tie-downs? We just stacked them, Raymond said. Look, if this is about AIM or the cause, I can call an attorney that'll spin your head in fines and legal bills. I'm not interested in that shit, he said. Y'all know that it's illegal to have this much, whatever, in the back of a pickup without any kind of tarp or tie-downs? I did not know that, he said. Now you know. VFW, huh? Yeah, the reunion. Oh yeah, the Everett reunion and powwow. Never been to a powwow, would like to go sometime. Well, why don't you go to this one? Raymond said. It's the biggest one yet. I can't go while I'm on patrol. Well, you could go when you get off. What's in the cooler, man? Food, I swear. I'm gonna need to open them. He talked into his radio. All of them? You got it. The cop grabbed a cooler from the top, opened it, moved his hand around. What in the hell is this? Like I told you, it's food. No, I said, tired of the exchange, sweaty and ready to get back so we could drop off the tamales. It's not food. They're Aztec sandwiches. Don't I know you? The cop looked at me from under his hat. Yeah, ain't you Ricky Pinto? Robbie. Yeah, you Maggie's boy. Thought I recognized you. How's Aunt Ruby? She's hungry, I said. Hungry? Oh, sandwiches. Tamales. She's at the VFW, the pavilion? Well, why the hell didn't you say so in the first place? I did, Raymond said. "Just follow me," the cop said. And just like that, we had a police escort to the reunion and powwow. After the blessing, before the powwow, pyramids on every plate. The tamales had been delivered, unpacked, unwrapped, and unshucked. Tony Michel and his band, the Black Roses, played songs from Redbone, Hendrix, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Everyone danced, some balancing their plate of tamales or a cup of contraband beer. Even Aunt Ruby stood and walked into the crowd, danced with Leo Brings Rain and Randy Everett. Leo Brings Rain twirled her under his giant arm. The cop left shortly after we'd parked, said he'd come back if he could, told us to say hi to Aunt Ruby. The day had been for the best. I sat back in a lawn chair, exhausted from the heat and the pressure. The ice in my Coke made it all water and no fizz. My stomach gurgled from too many tamales. The music was loud. The people were louder. But then there was a voice, a singular guttural shout that resonated over all. "Where the bitches at?" Taco sauntered in from the parking lot, tried to dance with women as he passed, but then was rebuked. He pursed his lips at them as he walked by. He was bald, tattooed, the scar, the mutant thumb, gnarled in the daylight. "Hey, cousin, what's up, homie?" He held out his hand, the mangled one. "Hey, man, been a little while," I said, taking the hand, scanning it. Though he'd been long out of juvie, he had just gotten out of parish lockup for a DWI, but instead of coming home back to Aunt Ruby's, he went to a friend's house across the bridge in Hemp Hill. "Oh, you know how it be. Say, where them tamales at?" "Over there," I said, motioning to the back table. "But you might be too late." "Nah, Aunt Ruby always makes enough." I wanted to tell him that maybe she didn't make enough for him. But that'd be wrong. Of course she had made enough for him. No matter how many people came or would show, they were an offering to the spirits. And if anyone needed one, Taco needed one. I watched him walk to the table, slapping the hands of the people of whom I didn't know he knew, guys I was sure he sold to. I turned my back. I couldn't watch the scene. Taco had become something else, a cartoon gangsta. He walked and talked like a banger. He was never home for more than a few days. Aunt Ruby had kicked him out a long time ago, but let him come back whenever he needed her. And no matter how many times he came back, he was different, changed a little bit more each time, until I couldn't recognize him anymore. All I saw was the facade, the clown. I walked the parking lot. Cars and trucks were just about every inch of space. Even the grass wasn't. My skin, did you see that? We're getting to the good part. Language gets colorful from here on out. More colorful. Anyway, okay. Even the grass wasn't off limits. Some guys sat at the back of an F-150 drinking beer and talking over the noise of the music. I pivoted, walked the other way, toward the lake. No way was I going to be seen by them. I could picture what it'd be like, too. They'd call me over, offer me a drink. I'd drink, make a cringy face. They'd laugh, ask me if I got pussy, and then conclude I was a virgin, laugh again, this time at my expense, and then they'd call me a pussy and say they didn't respect pussies, and then try to fight me. So as it was, I happily walked the other way, took the other red dirt road. I was rounding the front of the pavilion when I heard him again over the music that had come to a stop. I ran over to see guys pushing Taco back as he struggled against them, trying to get it to Raymond, who was holding his arms outstretched, enticing him. "I'll fucking kill you, yo." Taco fought against the men pushing him away from the crowd. Raymond said something back I couldn't understand. Raylene cried, holding Lewis. Aunt Ruby yelled for him to just go away, come back sober, go sleep it off. The men pushed him out of the pavilion and into the parking lot. "You can't keep me out. Just watch us," one of the men said. "I know you, man. I know all y'all. I'll get you too. Just wait." The men waved them off, went back to the crowd. The music started again. He walked into the parking lot, saw the guys in the truck call him over. He turned away from them and walked out toward the lake to the pier. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he said. "You gonna let me sit? Or you gonna kick me out too?" "Aw, man, sit." "Cool," he sniffed. The sun was setting over the lake. Everything smelled like wet corn. The water sloshed up on the pier's wooden legs. A fish jumped in the distance. An egret swooped downward. Water bugs skated along the waves, making circles that rippled into larger hoops. We sat in the quiet. There was no need to speak. Thank you. Thanks for coming.